Hello, friends. We are back in another install of What's in Your Box this month. We are here in scenic, beautiful San Francisco. I am here with the lovely, the only Allyson Gorsuch.
Hi.
If anybody has not yet met Allyson, she is an amazing wine writer. She writes our newsletter that hopefully you have been reading every single month. And she used to be the beverage director at a few notable places like the Farmhouse Inn in Sonoma, at the Beverly Hills Hotel in Los Angeles, spent some time living in Austria, and she's joining
Australia.
us. Exactly. I'm jumping ahead. She used to live in the land of Oz, but today we're taking you somewhere considerably further away.
Just missing a few letters to Austria.
I know.
Instead, yeah.
Yeah. AUT, not AUS, for all of you postage codes nerds. This is a wine from Das Österreich.
Bless you.
Yes. I'm not allowed to speak German in a lot of places because A, mein Deutsch ist scheiße, and B, it tends to scare people, but Österreich just means Austria. And we are talking about a very groovy grape.
Terrible.
The puns actually get worse as we keep going. This is Grüner-Veltliner. Allyson, you've had a little bit of experience with blind tasting exams, and I have certainly failed my fair share of them.
Yes, I, yeah.
Grüner-Veltliner, what is it?
So Gruner's kind of fits in one of those triangles that we all talk about. You know, it's like, there's phenolics, there's this, there's that. It's a great food wine, but it gets confused with a couple other things like
So it's basically
Alsatian
your
Pinot
worst
Gris.
nightmare that you can possibly
Alsatian
get.
Pinot Gris, Sauvignon, Gruner.
Oh, so now you're bringing up last night. Oh yeah, so Allyson.
I get to throw a little shade sometimes.
Oh yeah, no, she blind tasted. We were at Graft at a really amazing wine bar here in San Francisco, owned by a couple of our fellow friends and master sommeliers, Rebecca Feynman and Chris Gaither, and
it was the first time I'd been in this space, and it's incredible.
Looks badass, right? We, by we I mean the man behind the camera and myself, asked Allyson to give us a wine to blind taste. And what she brought out with this wine was like, it's kind of earthy, it's kind of like, smells like hay, doesn't really smell like fruit all that much, and we both like immediately were like, Gruner! And it was Sauvignon, some Chenin Blanc from
and to
Western
be fair, you
Loire
danced
Valley.
all around it. You described the wine perfectly, but you just didn't get there.
Yeah, we got to every other place but there.
Didn't you both call Gruner?
I called Tokai Friulano, but then you told me that it was a grape that people have actually probably heard of before, so I switched to Gruner, begrudgingly. So today we thought we would taste Gruner. Yeah. So we are in the northernmost part of Austria. This is a region called the Weinviertel. The Weinviertel is the very northern, basically, expanse of Austria. It borders the Czech Republic, it borders Slovakia, and where this wine comes from is about 20 miles south of the Czech border and one of the coldest parts of the country for winemaking. So this is Schloss Maissau. It means castle in the village of Maissau. Very original.
Yeah.
So all of the vineyards here are on the property of a castle that was built in the 1340s on the site of another castle that had been there since the 800s.
Which is just crazy, for us U.S. people.
Yeah, it's like 1340s, okay. And literally renovated a couple of times, but basically the same exact structure as it was then. And it has been in the caretaking of the same family.
Would you please say his name?
Ernst Traum.
Traum. You have to put the hair.
Herr Ernst Traum is the bajillionth generation of caretakers of this property, and they've been taking care of this castle since 1547, which is insane.
Yeah.
So
he kind of noticed that the vineyards had been completely ignored and
basically
wanted to revamp them, or
basically in this part of Austria you get people that give a shit, and then you have people that are just growing grapes for the
Right.
sake of it. His predecessors, I believe, were in the former camp, and he is in the latter camp. So when he became caretaker, one of the first things he did, this is back in 2006, is that he went to one of the leading wine producing families in the region, the Grubers.
Right.
They own a really amazing winery called Gruber-Roschitz, because it's in the village of Roschitz. Very literal. Gruber-Roschitz was Ewald Gruber and his dad were approached by Herr Traum to bring the vineyards back to a state of respectability.
Right.
And
And vitality, really.
But anyway, long story short, if you want to get recognized as an organic wine producer or wine grower in Austria, it takes a long time. So in 2006, they started applying for the certification of being organic. In order to do so, the people that run the governing body, the ATBO 401, came out and they did soil readings, and they went, holy God. And so they continued to do those soil readings until all of the chemicals that were in the ground were absent. And that took 7 years. And at which point, the Grubers were allowed.
But it took 3 years to get the chemicals out of the soil.
No.
Too,
It took
right?
7 years to get the chemicals out, and then they had to show 3 years of
Gotcha.
actual
I had those reversed.
production with nothing in the ground except for things like copper and
Right.
like normal shit basically.
Yeah.
So that is how they got their organic certification in 2016. All of these wines are now certified organic, which doesn't seem like a big deal, and it really isn't that big deal in Austria because mostly everybody is. But if you consider that grapes have been grown on this site for 1,300 years,
Right.
yeah, cool. So let's start by just giving a little preview of what we have here. So the Schloss Maissau is a castle. It has vineyards all over, the walled part of the castle as well as its adjoining lands. They make 5 wines. One is the basic GVBO, which is super delicious. And
I thought that was a fancy term earlier. Could you just say what GVBO is?
Grüner-Veltliner Bio Bike.
I didn't realize that it was the name of the wine. I
They
thought it was
are-
like another certification or something.
No,
so
they
I just
are-
wanted to clarify.
They are literally that literal. And that's the one that you can go online on blisswineconcierge.com and buy for $20 a bottle. All of you sommeliers out there studying, you want to taste Gruner,
Yeah.
the Gruner-esque Gruner possible, with all those spicy white pepper and arugula notes, get that one.
I was going to say because we kind of talked leading up to this, that white pepper that Andrey says that he doesn't identify, that is more apparent in that entry level.
Absolutely,
But as
yeah.
these get riper, it
ripens
ripens out.
Yeah, it's kind of like that green element that you get in Cabernet Sauvignon.
Right.
The longer it hangs, the less of it you get. Same thing happens with Gruner. So we have 4 single vineyards, and we are going to taste through them, and we're going to tell you a little bit about what for us stood out within each one.
And to be fair, we had the 3 of us, Tyler, hi. We tasted these several times in different orders to make sure that we were kind of doing it in a way that made sense.
Yeah.
So.
And also, to preface this before we also jump right into it, you are not expected to drink all 4 of these wines in a row.
But you can.
But you can. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to
Have
present
a Gruner
them.
party.
We wanted to present them in a way that I think made sense to everybody. So we are going to start with Steinwandel.
Mm-hmm. And so we kind of talked about this one. It has a leesy component to it. And
Allyson, what does leesy mean?
So thank you. It's a really fancy way of saying the wine spends time on dead yeast cells.
Oh, that's sexy.
So Gruner is, again, a tough blind wine to taste because its acidity levels can be a little bit different as well. They're not always high, they're not always medium plus, more than likely they are, but regardless. So this wine, for me, it has that leesy component, which gives it some texture, but it's the one that has the least texture of them.
Mhm.
It also has a very, very clean finish.
Yeah.
So this, again, I'm really hung up on snap peas today. I don't know why. But I liked your radish too. Like anything that's crunchy and clean and springtimey, arugula, I liked that with this.
I wanted to jump in and also say, like, for those of you that have trouble blind tasting, or for those of you just like that want to see what Gruner actually like does mouthfeel wise, to me the younger or the more fresher, earlier picked versions of this grape, they almost bounce off your palate. It's almost effervescent, and that's for me how I walked into Gruner backwards somehow in a couple of blind tasting exams. And the reason we would pick Steinwandel, which by the way means stone wall, so if you want to stonewall somebody in a blind tasting,
There's the second one.
but I told you they get worse. For me, when I put it on the palate and I hold it there, there's almost a kind of like a bounciness to the wine.
Like I almost want food with that.
Yeah, and it has this more really kind of more tart flavor profile, and it's also the youngest of the 4 wines that we're sending you.
Right.
And to me, the fruit that leads here is green apple. It's got that tart, kind of like a little bit of more of that really more like
It's just right.
fresher, brighter kind of element to it. But it also has this very kind of like leaner, younger, I don't want to say more refreshing kind of on a hot summer's day kind of a quality to it. And also, like we talked about microgreens, we talked about arugula, we talked about watercress. These are things that are going to be enhanced by a wine like this. So if you want to make that spring salad pop, that's the one.
Agreed.
We're going to tell you just a couple of nerdy things about it. First of all, 3,000 bottles produced. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about that lees kind of contact. It's 6 months on the yeast cells, and then they take them off. Basically, they filter it slightly so it's not gunky, and then they leave it on whatever's left over for 3 more months.
Right.
Keep that in mind as we talk about the rest of these, because they're going to change wildly. And
So I think really and truly, you and I sort of like learned a little something today and have had some fun with this, because this really, all 4 of these wines are sort of an exploration of different processes and time lengths of gross and fine lees, which is, I mean, we've been in the wine business for a hot minute. You're a master sommelier, but every single day we still kind of learn
some
stuff.
shit that's new. And also, this is kind of a note. The reason why people do this is that, like, you know, in really warm climates like we are here in, well, not here, it's freaking cold outside San Francisco, but you go a little bit to the north and you go to the valley of the Napa, say, for example, you don't need any help with texture.
Right.
You got plenty of it. But in colder places like the Weinviertel, or like places like Muscadet or Rias Baixas, or like, you know,
You
like,
do need a mid
you
palate.
need something to fill in that palate. Otherwise, your wine tastes anemic. If anybody's ever been to San Sebastian, what do they drink there? Chocolate. Why do they put gas in chocolate? Because otherwise, it would just be a really basic wine. So next up, we are going to take you to Das Juliusberg. Yeah.
You say that one better than I do.
Juliusberg? Okay, by the way, if you ever see the word reed, and it's reed, not ride.
Well, I told you, my German teacher in high school told me that when E and I go to walking, the second one does the talking. R-I-E-D, so it's reed. If it were the reverse, it would be ride.
Sure. It's a reed. Reed means single vineyard, essentially. And the Juliusberg is our oldest wine we're going to show today, but yet we're showing it to you second. Part of the reason why is the vineyard itself, after 2013, they had a pretty kind of, you know, like, vineyards, they do have a shelf life. Not Albarino, not Grenache, but Gruner has a shelf life. And they decided that the vines in this vineyard were not necessarily healthy enough to keep going.
And I mean, there's also like a healthy to like profitability ratio too, right?
I don't actually mean, when you own a castle for 600 years, I really don't think that's what they were going for.
Fair.
I actually think that the vineyard looked like shit, and they probably decided to replant it.
Well, they just weren't producing quality anymore.
Yeah, and
That's
so
all.
they replanted the vineyard in 2014. So these are our youngest vines. You're talking about vines here that are somewhere between 30 and 45 years old. This one was replanted in 2014.
Right.
Great year for it to be replanted because
Yeah.
it was a complete dog shit vintage in Austria. And anybody that
It's
tells you
young, and
otherwise,
it doesn't matter. Yeah.
it's like anybody that tells you otherwise is selling you something. But it's a vineyard that was replanted, and for this reason, this Juliusberg is the smallest production of the wines that we have. It produced a whopping 600 bottles. You heard that right.
I did.
600 bottles. And when you smell it, one of the craziest things that jumps out at me is this flavor profile that, like, we talked about, like, this tropical kind of a quality to it. It smells like bananas and pears.
Yeah. Well, we kind of talked, like, this one has a lot of more of a spectrum of fruit, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's showing different family groups of fruit. But then there's also, getting back to your, like, vegetal, I mean, there's some mushroom in here.
Yeah.
There's, FYI, there are 4 wines here, and each one of us liked a different one best.
Yeah.
This happens to be my favorite.
Yes.
But
I also think that it's really cool to notice, like, the harvest dates on these. And if you want to get really nerdy, they fluctuate wildly every single year. So one of the things to take back to the beginning is the basic wine that they released in great quantity, the GVBO, is meant to taste like classic Weinviertel Gruner every single year.
right.
Which means that it's spicy, it's peppery, it has this crisp kind of a quality to it, it bounces off your palate. It's very Grunery Gruner. Depending on the vintage, when you pick this stuff really, really matters. And, like, ask how many people in France outside of Alsace pick in October.
Right.
No one. Like,
So I mean, again,
Provence,
that's another
you know.
respectable winemaking choice, right?
Mm.
Or risky, but respectable. But this to me is the most phenolic for sure.
And what phenolics means
Thank
is,
you.
like, for those of you that drink red wine, tannins, that grippy feeling, white wines have those too. They come from skins. And that kind of, like, slightly drying, slightly bitter quality that you get on your palate, that's phenolics. And certain grapes have them, and certain grapes don't.
And we didn't actually talk about that, but these all have skin contact for what, 20 hours or something like that. So
Sometimes
they're
10 days.
de-stemmed and put in a stainless tank, but they sit on the skins purposely so that they can get that phenolic.
But if you're talking about richness, this wine definitely has a really kind of a richer flavor profile. And this is the wine that I would say that if you wanted to make it incredibly versatile and do it with fried foods, you want to do it with potatoes, you want to do it with hash browns.
There's your root vegetable.
There's your root vegetable. Potatoes are tubers, but it is a wine that's incredibly versatile and incredibly friendly to the entire table.
I was gonna say this almost kind of begs for butter a little bit.
Yeah, because it has the texture and the richness to round itself out. We talked about that Lees thing. Going back to Jayberg, Jayberg sat on its fine lees for 4 years.
Yeah,
that's why it's 2017. It's young
But
vines.
that's also because it was the young vines,
Yeah.
right?
This has a richer texture, and it only spent 6 months. 8 months. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
8 weeks.
12 months on the fine leaves, but just 8 weeks on the gross.
Yeah, and
So, anyway.
completely different approach. And this is a wine that has texture and has flavor, and it really is one of those. If you just want to have it on its own, it is just absolutely freaking delicious. Which brings us to our last wine. All right, we have Das Kittengang. Allison,
Yes.
you look like you're from Germany.
Do I?
What does Kittengang mean?
I don't know.
Oh shit, I forgot to tell you. Never mind. No, it means quince path.
I mean, fair enough. I set you up at the beginning with the failed blind tasting, so you can give me a little shit now. That's
Well,
fine.
I mean, this is the thing: is like German is not as scary for people that speak English. It's just scary for people that speak English that think that German's hard. Gangway. What's
Okay.
a gangway? It's a path, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kitten means quince, gang, path, Quince path. Talking about wine, this is my personal favorite. We're talking about a wine that has both the intensity and the texture to really stand up to really whatever you throw at it. And by whatever you throw at it,
Yep.
here we go. So,
Andrey and I also have very different taste profiles in food.
not really.
Sometimes.
I just hate mayo.
And I don't like anchovies.
Hip Young Sam made us a couple of sandwiches. Mine is based on microgreens, arugula, anchovies, pine nuts, and mustard.
And mine is cucumber, pecorino, which is, by the way, my favorite food. I didn't know that you know that, and just claim it. Pine nuts, and some frisée as well.
And mayo.
And mayo and mustard.
No, mayo is not a good thing for me. So we are going to take a bite and to show you that Keaton can be amazing with Keaton goddamn anything.
Oh no. I'm glad we got the triple pun there. I mean,
Holy shit. That's fucking amazing.
it's better with mayo, just saying.
You're better with mayo. Okay, so as a sommelier, we're going to talk about bridges, things that link the plate and the glass. Here, there is a very distinctive kind of a nuttiness that comes out of this wine that just made those pine nuts pop.
100%.
And there's like this floral thing. And
But
this,
isn't it interesting, like when you're wine and food pairing, if you know, as you do it, like if it's high acid and you eat something with acid, it actually lowers the presence of acid or the perception of acid. Mm-hmm. And so really, this wine was nutty 2 minutes ago until I ate some nuts, and now I see the fruit more, and not.
it changes it.
Yeah.
And I also want to just compliment the fact that like acidity, things that are tart and things that are salty go really well together.
Yep.
And the fact that there's anchovies on this, and the fact that this is acidic, it just made that blend incredibly well together.
Yeah.
So while this is what we like to call a hipster California sandwich, because it has microgreens, fresh baked bread, pine nuts, and a bunch of other shit.
And being back in St. Louis, I really miss hipster California sandwiches. Not gonna lie.
They sell cucumbers in St. Louis.
Yeah, but I get made fun of in St. Louis. I think
Who
I've told you
cares?
this several times. When I was living out here, Californians would say to me, "You're so Midwestern." And now that I'm back in the Midwest, they say, "Oh my God, you're so California."
Here's my piece of advice to you. Go to
Own it.
Own it. Go to a place called Union Loafers.
Oh, I love that place.
Tell Sean that you just want some really badass bread.
Yeah.
And that what you're gonna put on it is this. He's gonna give you the bread. All you have to do is go home and then just go to your local Straubs. And I know, you're fine. And go to your local.
There's a story there. We're not gonna get into it.
Go to your local Deerbergs and buy the rest of the stuff that's readily available. All right. I mean, I think we're pretty much done with.
Well, this
Gruner.
was fun, and thanks for having us over, Tyler.
Well, I mean, I think the end of the story before I start munching on the rest of the sandwich, because it is freaking delicious, is that Grüner-Veltliner is one of the most versatile and one of the coolest grapes you can have in your arsenal. It is our pleasure to scout the world to bring you cool stuff like this instead of just bringing you stuff that's like, you can find almost anywhere.
And really, how fun to have the same grape variety from the same area in 4 completely different expressions. And that's really what Gruner's all about.
Yeah. And so if you liked it, please send us an email, send us a note, and also you go on to blisswineconcierge.com, sign up for the newsletter that Allyson writes. You can sign up for our wine club, or you can just buy some of this delicious wine on your own.
Yep.
Signing off from, for once, sunny San Francisco. Cheers.
Cheers.
Prost, and Ander das Grüne.